You can order the lower control arms used in the video on the CarParts.com website via the link in the description. Turn your engine off and set the parking brake. Before lifting your vehicle, it is necessary to measure the distance between the center of your wheel and the wheel arc. This will allow you to achieve an optimal tightening of the parts in their initial position. Remove the central rim cover to access the nut on the end of the transmission. Use a breaker bar and a 35mm socket to loosen, unblock, the nut on the end of the transmission. Loosen the stud bolts on the front wheels. Lift the front of your vehicle. We strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Ram 1500 safely before carrying out this step. Place the vehicle on the jack stands. To be able to replace the lower control arms on your vehicle, you need to remove the wheels to gain complete access to the suspension system. Don't forget to put the wheels under the vehicle. Finish unscrewing the nut on the end of the transmission. It is now necessary to remove the caliper assembly. Attach a wire to the body of the vehicle in order to maintain the assembly when it's removed. Using a socket wrench and a 21mm socket, unscrew the two holding screws on the caliper mount. Remove the caliper assembly and fasten it. Unscrew the retainer from the disc. Then remove the disc. Then use a fork to unclip all the clips that hold the ABS sensor cable in place. Next, unclip the ABS sensor cable retaining clip behind the mudguard. Disconnect the connector by pushing the red plastic tab, then prying the tab and pulling it. You can now move the cable aside. You must then disengage the upper control arm ball joint of the wheel knuckle. Release the ball joint with a ratchet and a 21mm socket. Use a hammer to strike the knuckle. The ball joint should come out of the knuckle. Brush the nut of the lower control arm ball joint and spray it with penetrating oil. Unlock the lower control arm ball joint nut using a ratchet and a 24mm socket and unscrew the nut a few threads. Hey, it's Alex from CarParts.com. If you enjoyed this video and want to support us, like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, back to work. It is now time to remove the outer tie rod from the knuckle. To do so, we recommend watching the video, How to Replace the Outer Tie Rod Dodge Ram 1500. Then, finish unscrewing the upper control arm ball joint. Then, remove the ball joint from the wheel knuckle. Apply penetrating oil to the lower control arm ball joint. Then hit the wheel knuckle with a hammer to disengage the ball joint. Finish unscrewing the nut of the lower control arm ball joint. Then remove the wheel knuckle by disengaging both the front CV axle and the control arm ball joint. Disconnect the sway bar end link from the lower control arm. To do so, we recommend watching the video, How to Replace the Sway Bar End Link Dodge Ram 1500. This car is equipped with alignment camber bolts so that you can adjust the alignment of your vehicle. Using a marker, trace a line between the alignment camber bolt and the frame, which will allow you to get as close as possible to the initial wheel alignment setting when reassembling. In any case, a wheel alignment check will have to be carried out by a professional soon after having performed this operation. Brush the lower control arm retaining nuts and spray them with penetrating oil. Next, using a ratchet, a 24mm socket, and a 24mm wrench, unscrew the nut holding the two alignment camber bolts. Then, using a ratchet, a 24mm socket, and a 24mm wrench to prevent the bolt from rotating, unscrew the strut foot nut. Then, remove the bolt. You can now remove the two alignment camber bolts using a plastic mallet. You can extract them by jiggling the lower control arm back and forth. You can now remove the lower control arm. Brush and grease the control arm area to facilitate its installation. You can order the lower control arm used in the video on the CarParts.com website via the link in the description. Unscrew the ball joint retaining screw. Take the control arm. Then install the control arm. Reinsert the two alignment camber bolts. Then roughly screw the retaining nuts back on. If you want to know which tools and parts we use in this video, just check the description and you'll find everything you need. It is then necessary to insert the strut foot into the control arm. Next, reinsert the bolt. Screw the nut back on until it makes contact. Then raise the control arm using a jack so that you can put the lower ball joint of the sway bar end link back in place. Then screw the nut back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Remove the jack. You must now fit the wheel knuckle back into place. Grease the part that will be in contact with the lower control arm ball joint. Install the wheel knuckle by inserting it both into the CV axle and the lower control arm ball joint. Secure the assembly by tightening the nut that holds the ball joint in place until there is contact. If the nut turns with the ball joint, use a ratchet and a 12mm socket to hold the ball joint in place. Then, apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the upper control arm ball joint sleeve. Do not grease the inside of the cone. Reinsert the ball joint. Then, use a jack to lift the wheel knuckle in order to retighten the nut that holds the upper control arm ball joint in place. Put the outer tie rod back in place in the knuckle. Remount the castle nut and tighten it using a ratchet and a 21mm socket. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Take the key and fit it into the castle nut. Use a screwdriver to bend the key. You can now complete the tightening of the upper control arm ball joint with a torque wrench. Finish tightening the lower control arm ball joint with a torque wrench. To avoid damaging the silent blocks, tighten the lower control arm and strut foot retaining bolts in the vehicle on the ground position. Lift the wheel knuckle with the jack until the original measurement between the center of the wheel and the wheel arc is reached. Once at a distance, finish tightening the strut foot with the wrench. Using a 24mm wrench, turn the alignment camber bolts to realign them with the previously drawn marks, which will allow you to get as close as possible to the initial wheel alignment setting. Finish tightening the camber bolts with a torque wrench. Remove the jack. Reinstall the brake disc. Then put the retainer back in place. You can now reinstall the caliper assembly and screw it back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Don't forget to remove the cable that you used to hold the caliper assembly together. Replace the ABS sensor cable and clip it back into its slots. Then, reconnect it. Clip the ABS sensor connector back inside the mudguard. Replace the hub nut. Then, while blocking the rotation of the hub with a crowbar, screw it back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. During this operation, you will be intervening on the front axle of your car, so it is advisable to perform a wheel alignment afterwards. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheels in place. Operation complete.